Hello, and welcome once again to the accidentally named Freethought Blog's Podish-Sortacast, where people who are used to writing instead try to talk live on camera. Ideally, skepticism is all about facing the world as it truly is, as much as possible. But, given what that world is like at this point, that's something we all need a break from. So today we're talking about our geekly and nerdish hobbies. What do we do that actually brings us bite-sized biscuits of joy? Today we have H.J. Hornbeck from Reprobate Spreadsheet, Dr. Sarah from Geeky Humanist, P.Z. Myers from Pharyngula, and I'm Abby St. Brendan from Impossible Me. Many of our other bloggers were interested in this particular topic, but couldn't make it for one reason or another, although I have it on pretty good authority that practically all of them have at least some geeky hobbies. I thought it might be good this time to start off with HJ, who has something he wanted to talk about that is not traditionally seen as geeky, and I'm actually rather interested to hear why it is.
Oh, all right. My geeky passion is hiking, which, does not actually sound geeky. So to give you a counterpoint, let me introduce you to my map collection. Hey, look. This is the entire kit caboodle. Let me get a little bit more light on that so you can see just how many maps are within that thing. Admittedly,
That's a lot. Can you get the Funko Pop version of those maps?
sadly not. No, the Funko Pop has not expanded out into that yet. I know some of these actually are road maps, so I'm not sure that counts. This is technically a
Cargo
guide,
Pops.
as is this. This is a star chart, but suffice to say, a lot of them actually are genuine hiking maps. Full topo, usually sort of giving you the exact lay of the land itself, along with routes and layouts for that. And in the past, actually, I have been good enough that I actually have memorized pretty much most of what's on those. I could give you a rough idea of how long a specific hike is, where it was located, what difficulty it was at. And that's just simply because I hiked so much in the past. Now, I have gotten a little bit rusty over the years, but rusty over time, but I do generally sort of have that edge to some extent. And, I've built up a lot of knowledge and a lot of gear over the time and all that. And I'll give you a good pitch for why,
So you're
what
saying you
exactly.
moved to HJ more recently, and it used to be GPS Hornbeck.
Well, no, actually, I still do have GPSs as well. But it's important to actually have multiple ways. Oh, I don't even have my GPS here. Funny. Sorry, I've got 3 GPSs in total. I think 2 of them are sitting over there. One seems to have disappeared. So, yes, GPSs are kind of handy in the backcountry. I tend to treat them with a bit of skepticism, though. I have actually run into,
With a
generally
bit of
speaking,
what?
yeah, GPSs, it turns out, are not as good as they're lived up to. Especially in the backcountry, you will often find they can be off by 10 or 20 meters. And when you're in the forest, 10 or 20 meters can be a huge difference. I remember one time I was coming out, I was trying to go down an area I had been before on a disastrous hike. It was pitch dark, overcast, and no moon. And I was mostly sort of flying by wire on the GPS itself. And the GPS could not direct me to the proper trail that I knew was there because I had actually done it in the past. And that's just simply because it had a little bit of inaccuracy and all that. And in the dark with just a headlamp, couldn't actually see where to go. So, it is important, in addition to having that, is to also carry a paper map with you. Because this is a high-end backup if the battery in your GPS dies or you're not quite sure where you are. And of course, if you're carrying a map, you should also carry a compass too. This is my lower quality compass. I've actually got a better one, which is universal and contains things like an altimeter and all that. Really cool stuff. But definitely, I would recommend carrying a map and compass with you as a minimum. On top of that, and finally, the third and most important thing is what you got in here. Most of the time, when it comes to navigating, I don't even bother with the map itself. I've read the trail guide enough and sort of know it that I can actually sort of navigate it blindly and give you and sort of have sort of the basic knowledge of, okay, we turn left, we turn right here, that sort of thing. And again, most of the hikes that I do tend to be on fairly well routed things. So usually there's a sign up saying, hey, this is the way you go. Not always, but this is where you
Any
do.
advice on what to do? And this sounds like a joke, but it's not. If you don't have the stuff up there, like for myself, I do not own a sense of direction.
Ah. Well, train yourself on that sense of direction. It is incredibly valuable. One thing I have actually tried to do is get a feel for the sun. Where exactly it is at very specific times of day, and just based on that, you can actually use that as an informal compass. Obviously, doesn't work too well when it's overcast out, but
All
it's
right.
a good
So,
way to
in
go.
short, your suggestion is if you don't have a sense of direction, stare directly at the sun.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes, if you can actually use a magnifying lens, and yeah, I'm not speaking from personal experience there.
Well, that sounds like an eyeball burning great time.
Actually, I suffered no permanent damage from it, so it's fine. Yep, I've
Neither
been
did
top Tom.
Donald Trump.
Well, except Donald Trump just stared at the sun. I stared at the sun through a telephoto lens. A little bit worse.
Hang on, you're saying you're saying that your geeky pursuit is hiking, therefore you're dumber than Donald Trump? Is that where
No,
the conversation just went? Because I was not predicting that.
no, I'm actually smarter than Donald Trump because I managed to do it without hurting my eyes. I knew enough about the physiology and the physics of what was happening on to prevent any sort of permanent eye damage, even though I was staring at the sun through a telephoto lens for, what, 30 seconds, I think, at least?
Well, that certainly sounds like a sun-staring good time. Do you have anything else you'd like to move into, or for that matter, any advice for the rest of us if
Oh,
we
good.
wanted to actually start doing something as clearly nerdly as walking around randomly in the forest?
Oh, yes, yes, I've got plenty of advice on that. For
Oh
one
dear,
thing,
what have I done?
you have actually got us into the topic. Great. So one thing you probably should carry is some sort of emergency blanket of some sort. You know those little like silver space age ones and all that? I actually insisted on carrying one for years while hiking, and in fact, it has saved my life. That aforementioned hike back during the night, that was actually a 36K hike that went wrong and turned into a 43K hike. On the way back, I was coming back I think at like 2 a.m., pitch black, overcast, blah, blah. And between exhaustion and the sort of change in the terrain due to floods and all that, I just did not, well, and also exhaustion and the brain fuzz that goes with it, did not trust myself to actually figure out where the correct path is in the dark. So I went back to a campsite which I knew was there and passed by and actually got a 15-minute nap in the latrine, but found a spot. Hey, when you've been hiking for 12 hours, you try and get as much napping as you can, you know? So
You're
yes.
not
You're not selling this very
Yes,
well.
I was going to say, you're not selling this to us. My hobby's great. Sometimes we have to stare directly at the sun and get lost in the middle of the night and have to sleep in a crapper. Okay?
Hey, I did not sleep in the crapper.
I was
I
thinking
napped
about
in the
talking about...
crapper. Let's be clear here. Napped in the crapper. I slept under this. So yes, curled up for, I think, 5 hours of sleep underneath one of these emergency blankets. And, I mean, it was awful, but I woke up so much sharper and had no problems navigating out the rest of the way. So there you go. Always carry one of the things. They're super lightweight. I had just like a one-person one on me. This is a two-person reusable. If you got the money, splurge.
That's right. If
It's
you're going
much
to go
more fun
sleeping in a
with two.
bathroom, you need the two-person reusable.
Exactly. Exactly. Another thing that's really handy on these hikes as well is this is a portable water pump. Essentially, you take the little spindly thing right here, dump it into some sort of water supply out wherever, it doesn't matter, and then pump the handle a couple of times. And outside the bottom here, you get nice clean water. I would hesitate to say it saved my life, but I have used it so many times, I literally just carry it even when it makes no sense on the backpack itself. This thing is, in fact, user serviceable. I can rip the thing apart. I have, in fact, done so on the trail, taking little bits off it. Get this bit. Oh, yeah, gotta get the other side out. I have gone through and actually done full replacements on everything within here, and, it is so invaluable to me that I would recommend anybody get something like this. Oh, shoot. This rubber gasket, I think, needs replacing. It's a little torn up. I'll have to do that later.
Everyone should get one of these, like, will not break. Bang. It broke. Oh, okay. Oh, man, that's an old callback.
Yeah.
Interesting question in the chat there. It says, can you get thermoelectric gear to keep the electronics going with a small fire?
Yes, you can, actually. That's something that was, I think it was invented in the past 5-10 years or so. Essentially, if you've got like a small portable stove, You can actually get something which has like a heat pump, which outputs a small amount of current. Not a heck of a lot, but enough to actually do like a trickle charge on a cell phone and all that. Certainly, if I was going out there for extended times and all that, and I was carrying a stove, I might actually consider it. Generally speaking, the alternative I would do is just either A, solar panels, or be very aggressive with your phone power saving. I actually went out camping just recently for multiple days, and my phone never dipped below about 80% charge because I kicked into airplane mode and kicked on battery saver and only used it for taking photos. So you'd be surprised how well even an older generation iPhone can last.
Right. So, in short, nap in the bathrooms and trickle everywhere else.
Exactly. Yes. Do not sleep in the bathrooms. It is very uncomfortable.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It was legitimately interesting and also slightly terrifying. So let's move from terrifying to PZ Myers, who
I haven't
surely
even-
is not going to tell us anything truly terrifying, are you?
Why, no, not at all. Actually, everybody was telling me, oh, we know what you're going to talk about. You're going to talk about spiders. And I could, but I racked my brain to try and think of what other hobbies I have that might surprise people. And I thought of one that I used to have.
Good. I'm glad you're not going to try to surprise us with spiders, because that's
Yeah,
bad.
that would not be surprising at all, actually.
Well, I'd be worried you could successfully surprise us with spiders, and I, for one, do not enjoy being surprised by spiders.
No, but when I was a young boy, I had a weird hobby that everyone thought was very geeky. And that was that we had this old encyclopedia, a 1918 World Book Encyclopedia. Not because I was that old, but because that's what my parents could afford, was an old, worn out, used World Book Encyclopedia. And I love browsing through this because this was a weird encyclopedia. I don't know. Has anybody seen these before?
I remember them.
Yeah, they've got activities for children in them. They've got rules for games. They got all this other stuff in there. And what got me hooked was they had plans for making little cardboard buildings. So you could copy their plans and you cut these things out of postcard and you fold them and you glue them and you make a little cathedral or whatever. And I really got into that for many years. And so I started making these. Oh, I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. And it turns out that in order to do these things properly, you need to know a little bit of geometry. You need to develop tools for mechanical drafting. So I was a 10-year-old with a T-square and a set of triangles and an elaborate set of compasses for, making circles and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I would do for fun, is get a big sheet of postcard and plan out a universe that I would then draw out, cut out, and fold. It was Minecraft before there were computers. Well, home computers. So that I found really entertaining. It was also really useful because I had to learn trigonometry as well as geometry in order to do these things. So it was an early introduction to mathematics as far as I was concerned. And so I did that for a number of years, built a lot of these things. And then the fun thing about them is that afterwards you can blow them up with firecrackers.
Was it more buildings, or what kinds of models was it? Actual like planets, or?
No, I was making buildings, little miniature houses and, well-known monuments. I made a Stonehenge. Little
Well, I
things.
mean, you made a paper hinge.
Yes. Yes, but
Like Andy Izzard says, before Stonehenge, there was Strawhenge and Woodhenge, but a big bad wolf came.
yes, but at least I made it, and then I got paints and I tried to paint it so it looked like stone and all this kind of, and
Making
I
yourself the true lord of the hinge.
yes. I actually made it. I actually brought it in as an art project to school and fun things like that. They were very impressed. So
I'm being
that's
silly, but that actually sounds pretty cool.
it's
I
yeah,
like that.
it's about as nerdly and geeky as you can get because it involves math and drafting and
And you're saying you mostly blew them up with firecrackers?
well, they're cheap and easy and you can make lots of them and they start to accumulate.
Oh, no. I'm not. Let's be clear. This
Yeah.
I'm not taking an anti-firecracker position. I'm actually specifically angling to find out if you ever stomped on them.
Oh, like Godzilla or something.
Yes, like Godzilla or something.
No, I didn't. That must have been a gap in my mind because what I preferred to do was firecrackers and BB guns and setting them on fire and little things like that. And maybe I should take up the hobby again and
Go
start.
for it.
Yeah,
I mean, you're encouraging me to want to do it.
yeah. And then I could go out there with a little GoPro and photograph myself stomping through the village and crushing things. Yeah,
Okay, we're joking, but I legitimately want to see that. That sounds fantastic. Like, especially with the GoPro thing and like the Godzilla's eye view of destroying a city. That sounds fantastic.
okay. When I get some free time, I'll think about it. Yeah,
Yeah, you got to do that.
yeah. I just have. Well, it took time. I had to build all these things, and nowadays nowadays I would think about using them as a spider colony. Oh, that would be fun.
That would be fun.
And then you don't
Especially
stomp
if you're
on it.
doing little tiny monuments and whatever.
Yeah.
You have like a spider on the Empire State Building, another one on the Arc de Triomphe.
Yeah, maybe I ought to introduce this hobby to my grandchildren, put them to work.
Well, I mean, that can be your new secondary hobby, making your grandchildren do things. Best of luck with that.
Once you're hooked, though, it's really easy. You can start getting into it.
That's honestly, it tempts me. I mean, I'm not going to take the big turn now, but I will mention I've been moving to more into doing making myself. You mentioned Minecraft before there were computers, which is like surely not. No one was alive then. But I tend to think of actually building things and making things in the real world as playing Minecraft on hard mode.
Oh, yeah, because you're a theater person. You must get into that kind of thing.
I'm a bunch of different things person. I will mention I have recently been moving more into making things physically and the gesture I'm doing. Aliens. No, I'm not making aliens. I recently made a workbench I'm very proud of. It is large and heavy, and I'd never made anything out of just starting from raw lumber before. And
Uh-huh.
I don't know if this, you know what? Tell me, the other three of you, when you're like doing a project, you experience you've got the plan in front of you, and you just heads down, you're going to do the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and you're going to do things, and then you look up and it's suddenly done. Because I did
Yes.
that. Yeah, because I did that, and then there's a moment of, I just made a piece of furniture. What the? That can happen? That was weird.
Yeah. You get focused and not only do you just keep going and going and going until it's done, but you kind of forget about all those other human things like eating and sleeping while you're doing them.
Human things. I can't be bothered with that.
Yeah.
I do that with
I don't know how
Minecraft
to
all the time.
I don't know how to segue from not human things to the doctor, but I'll just do that with the no link whatsoever. Sarah, did you have some stuff you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I was wondering whether to talk about an old hobby that, given current events, I've just been rediscovering, which is learning obscure trivia and less trivial things about the English royal family in its history. However, having been assured that I would be putting myself in the way of a certain amount of mocking if I did that, I thought, okay, possibly not quite the time. So my very obscure interest is arguing with people about whether or not the original Jesus, prior to all the stuff written about him in the Bible, was actually a real person or a total myth. And this involves knowing a certain amount about Second Temple Judaism, which happens to be something I find interesting, and it involves getting into detailed debates with people who want you to think of them as being very rational. So they generally try not to scream at you too much. And it involves getting into very analytical debates in a situation and debunking stuff. I absolutely love debunking bad reasoning. It involves doing this in a situation where there are just no stakes whatsoever. You know, it isn't having to debunk myths and people are putting out about oh yes, this myth justifies us hating group X or whatever. It's okay, nobody cares. We can just have a delightful discussion of a delightful heated argument about this, and it makes no difference whatsoever to the real world. Nobody cares. Every so often I get someone showing up in my comments to tell me this really does not matter, as though they think this is some sort of bug rather than a feature. I know it doesn't matter. That's brilliant. That's one of the reasons I like doing it.
So you're
yes,
saying, in short, one of your hobbies is having heated arguments that you can pleasantly warm yourself against on the topic of whether Jesus was a myth or a mister.
That's it. Oh, God, shut up. Without the puns, yes.
What? What's the point of anything without the puns?
Anyway, without the puns, yeah, that's what I do. And since everyone seems to be talking about making things, or rather two people are talking about making things, I will add that I also used to be very keen on knitting, which I gave up due to a general lack of spare time in which to do it. But I thought that was a brilliant hobby because, well, I mean, you get a jumper out of it, but that's not the main thing. The main thing is it involves doing something that's very complicated, but in a situation where A, you can spot when you've gone wrong, and B, you can go back, unpick everything and put it right. And I have to tell you, when I was starting out as a junior doctor and starting on a career where I was doing complicated things in a situation where those two things were usually not true, this was a pretty relaxing hobby. So yeah, that was my reason for enjoying that.
Being able to go back and undo things?
Sorry?
It's no, I was repeating what you said. Being able to go back and undo something.
Yeah, being able to undo something, even if it meant a lot of unpicking, and do it correctly.
One almost never permits that in surgery.
Or in real life generally, but you know, being a doctor at the time, I was not doing surgery. I was a very, very junior doctor, not entrusted with an awful lot of stuff. But you know, the general concept of in this situation, if I make a mistake, I can go back and undo it and redo it was wonderful.
I know very little about this particular craft. What exactly is the difference between a knit and a purl?
The stitches face the other way. Basically, if you think of all knitting as looping the loops you have already made over subsequent loops and attaching them all together, then the knit stitches, the loop goes over the back, so the little ridge the previous stitch made is on the back of the work, or the front, because you have to keep turning it around as you go because of having to keep changing needles. And the purl stitch, the ridge is in the front, and you can use this to make all sorts of patterns, like rib, where you have lines of the stitches in the front or in the back, or moss stitch, where you're just alternating constantly between front and back stitches, and they make all these different textures.
Yeah,
I might have geeked you into silence there. Sorry, I did not mean to go that far.
Well, you just terrified me because I find knitting extremely scary.
I can show you some of the stuff I knitted if you want.
You find the production of textiles scary? I have some bad news for you about your main charges.
No, it was when I was in graduate school in Oregon, in rural Oregon. Everyone had sheep, and they were constantly knitting. And so when I did my PhD defense, I looked out, and there were all these people with little sticks knitting madly while I was talking.
I'm glad you specified it was the people, because you said there was all these sheep and they were always knitting.
I did wonder about
The,
that
the
for a
people
moment.
were, yeah, the people were. There was this huge discussion about different kinds of wool and breeding sheep specifically for certain. It was total madness.
You found it baffling?
There you go again.
Yes, I do. that's one of my. No, it would not be accurate to call that a hobby. That's a lifestyle.
Yeah, that's either that or a permanent brain condition, something like that.
See, now I'm just trying to figure out how can we make connections between all of these things. I mean, if you connect the idea of walking long distances and being a lamb, you actually kind of do arrive at Jesus.
I mean, he did. Walking around was quite common. I mean, there's that infamous, I think, 2 Corinthians from Saul, where he talks about like 1,000-kilometer trip he was doing around the Middle East.
And that's because they had no choice. If you want to go somewhere, you got to walk.
I think they took donkeys or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, ride some slow animal. Yeah, and then there were the ships, but then that was dangerous.
So how about media? Because I know we all consume media of one kind or another, and I know HJ plays video games. I think PZ does too. I have no idea if you do, Sarah. Do you play games at all?
There's a few games I play.
I'm sorry to be a failure as a geek here, but I really don't.
No, I would never say that.
Thank you.
Your interests are your own and are valid, whatever they are. In fact, I would go so far as to say that is the fundamental tenet of being a geek. Everything's interesting if you look at it the right way.
True.
Yeah. It's all about different flavors of geekdom, too.
Yes. Whether or not you play video games is simply whether or not there's a specific crusting of crystal flavors around the outside. That metaphor got away from me, but it was funny. Oh, God. What are your favorites, gentlemen? In video games. I'm just a quick mention of that, seeing as this is the nerd stuff.
Well, I mean, if you want me to go first, I am hopelessly addicted to Minecraft. I mean, literally just this morning, I went and put some finishing touches on someone else's zombie piglin spawner. It actually wasn't working up to spec, so I went and improved it and changed things. And now I've got a ton of gold blocks, which I can use to build a beacon.
Uh-huh.
Which I think like 1 or 2 people in the audience actually understood, which is the point.
I understood it.
I've seen those things. I don't know what they're for.
What, the beacons?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're a great light source. You know, they actually emit light and all that. On some servers, actually, where they've exploited the game so badly, people actually use them as like lighting the paths and all that. They also give you special powers if you put them in a certain configuration. If you put them on top of like a pyramid of certain types of blocks, they'll actually emit magic spells, which give you special abilities. You'll be able to mine things faster, be able to jump faster. Actually, gain back health over time as well, too. It can be incredibly valuable in certain circumstances.
Okay, then. PZ?
About the only game I play right now is No Man's Sky. Because it's easy to do little short snippets where you go and you play for half an hour and accomplish something. And I just like the conceit of exploring a galaxy. So yeah, I play that every once in a while.
These are cool. Although I have not yet played it, the one that keeps running through my brain right now is a recent release that seems weirdly relevant, The Cult of the Lamb. Have you heard of it?
Oh, yes, yeah. Jim Sterling did a review of that just recently, didn't he?
No, Stephanie
No?
Sterling did a review of that, didn't
Oh,
they?
Stephanie Sterling. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. Commander Sterling. I'll just call him that. Call her that from now on.
Sadly, they.
Oh,
I know you're trying.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they'll be happy with Commander Sterling. That's not going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rather interesting. The idea. I love that it was specifically of the lamb. It seemed very appropriate. Wouldn't you say, Sarah?
Well, it ties in a vaguely sort of tangential way. So does this have anything whatsoever to do with anything Jesus-y, or is it just lamb connection?
It's about a cult.
It's mostly the lamb thing, really. It's literally about creating a cult. There's a suggestion of Lovecraftian dark forces there, and there are oblique references to Christianity, but it's not really Christianity.
Christianity, but not as we know it.
Not as we know it. Not as we know it, Captain.
Which
actually leads fairly well into me talking about some of the things that I do. Although before I do that, I do have one other question for PZ, because we went as far as to mention the Corinthians. I think H-Day did, and it's like, oh well, now that certainly references Sandman obliquely. In fact, I've always wondered if the story of the first and second Corinthians, but also first and second Kings, was a deliberate reference or not. But in the first season of Sandman, and early on in the book series, they have these couple of characters, Zelda and Chantal, who are said to have the largest collection of taxidermied spiders in private hands. Which just left me with the desperate need to ask, how on earth do you stuff a spider?
You
Very
don't.
carefully.
You fix them. I don't understand. Why would you I've got fixed spiders in jars.
How were they broken?
Fixation refers to chemical fixation.
So they're alcoholics.
Yeah,
there was actually that study about that in the 60s.
Yes. So we cross-link their proteins, and that makes them rigid, and so they can't move anymore, and they're dead. Well, they're dead, so they wouldn't anyway, but they just become stiff and pose for you.
I was semi-joking, but now I'm legitimately fascinated. What do you mean, cross-link their proteins?
Oh, that's how fixation works. If you use things like aldehydes or alcohol, what it does is it partially denatures proteins, and they cross-link. So you get the fibrous proteins, and they just lock together, and so the whole structure becomes much more rigid and immovable. So that's what we do with fixation. And it also prevents it from it makes it indigestible to bacteria. So that's another advantage.
So is that how embalming works?
I don't
I suppose
know.
You wouldn't particularly need to know that, but
yeah, I'm not sure, but embalming fluid seems to be rather weak and different compared to what I'm used to. I use things like a combination of acrolein and paraformaldehyde, and we make stuff that instantly fixes tissues in seconds and good things like that. So
I mean, I'm pretty sure formaldehyde's involved, but we do not do much embalming in the UK. It's we don't have that whole thing of having viewings after death, we clearly do some, since when I was doing some paperwork to funeral directors once, I encountered a chap whose job apparently was to go round to different funeral directors and do whatever embalming they needed doing, because there wasn't enough fit to keep a full-time member of staff on site. So they had one who just went from place to place. And I was absolutely delighted by the fact that this this man was effectively a travelling embalmer, which sounded like it ought to be from some sort of 30s novels about circuses or something.
Sounds like a great hobby, doesn't it?
It is the best. It does. It's the best job title. I don't think it was his official job title, but it was possibly the best job title I've ever heard. So,
I mean, what would be the official one? An itinerant
I
embalmer
didn't
and
find that
embalmer
out.
errant?
I was so enchanted with the whole travelling embalmer thing, and I thought it would probably be something much more boring in practice, so I didn't ask. I just said, "Oh, you're the travelling embalmer," and he did not contradict me, as I recall.
Oh,
Traveling from town to town, embalming whatever needs embalming, and hoping that the next town will finally be the embalming home. I don't know.
This has gone off in an interesting direction, though. Yeah, okay.
It has, but I put to you that remains on topic, because if there's one thing I think we all share, it's a love of weird trivia.
Uh-huh. But yeah, because now you've got me curious. I'm going to have to look up what an embalming fluid is, because I just feel like it doesn't quite fix tissues as I'm used to thinking of it.
Well, if I meet the travelling embalmer again, I will ask him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. I know. The idea fascinates me too. Now that's what I'm thinking of. It's, well, I guess in American political parlance. Well, okay. Thanks, embalmer.
Yeah. Now you got me looking it up.
All right. Well,
35% paraformaldehyde. Okay, that is a pretty strong fixative then. Okay. Yeah. So it's surfactants and dyes and water conditioners and
definitely moving into an October flavored topic now.
Yeah. Oh, there's different kinds of, this is cool stuff. Okay. There's arterial embalming and cavity embalming and surface embalming. Ooh.
I'm so torn, because on the one hand, I feel like I should be steering the topic back to where it's supposed to be, but on the other hand, creepy trivia is going to be like one of my favorite things ever. This is just right up the alley for one of my hobbies.
Yeah, I mean, I know next to nothing about it except what I'm reading right now, but it's kind of interesting.
Well, to chime in, the embalmer did also have the job of removing pacemakers prior to cremation, because as you probably know but might not, you can't leave a pacemaker in while the body's about to be cremated because it explodes. And one of my jobs when someone is to be cremated is to work my way through some paperwork, basically saying we will have no reason to want to do a post-mortem on this person in future, but also confirming that they do not have a pacemaker in them at this point.
I'm glad you mentioned that, if for no other reason. I was wondering why you were doing paperwork for a traveling embalmer in the first place.
And now you know, this was the reason. And there you go. This person had a pacemaker, and so this guy came in and removed it.
Oh, so that's another of the jobs of the traveling embalmer.
Yes, this is why I brought it up. They are the people who actually remove the pacemakers where needed.
Are there other things they have to remove?
But the topic did not come up. I was there specifically in terms of dropping off the paperwork and saying, okay, this person does have a pacemaker, can we have it removed? And
what if instead the traveling embalmer decided to restart the pacemaker and see what happens?
Well, it does not quite work like that, because by then the cardiac muscle is dead and you can't get it working again unless you run electricity through rather more of it than just the bit the pacemaker does.
And the brain is also dead at this point.
Hang on a second. The doctor just said you can't bring the heart back to life, and then said the word unless and kept going. Please explain. Is one of your hobbies
No, this is just me vaguely remembering stuff from first year physiology about cardiac tissue and getting it working with electricity, and I actually do not remember enough detail about this to be able to talk about it very usefully, because strangely enough, my day-to-day job doesn't involve carving out people's hearts and trying to restart them in isolation. You might be relieved to hear.
No, I'm actually kind of disappointed to hear
Yeah,
that, but
same here.
okay.
I mean,
It means your
it could
patients
have
are
been. The
alive, at least.
NHS has had some trouble lately, so perhaps perhaps there's something to do to bring in a little bit more revenue. Oh my God, what is the matter
God.
with me? Let's move to talking about other forms of media, shall we? Let's move away
Okay.
from the reanimation of corpses. Put a pin in that. Fix it, if you will, for next month. What are your favorite TV shows? HJ? Sorry, nobody seemed to go. So Sarah, then, what do you got?
Don't worry. I was literally just sitting there trying to think if there are any TV shows I liked, and oh my goodness.
I mean, I know you've mentioned Doctor Who in the past. I don't know.
Yeah, it is an extremely long time since I was watching Doctor Who regularly. I kind of like Doctor Who in theory, as in when someone brings it up, I always think, aha, my people. And then I realise I haven't actually watched it for many, many years. In fact, the last time I was watching it regularly, we were still on Peter Davidson and I was still at middle school. So, yeah, I am not the person to talk to you about Doctor Who, really.
Fair enough. PZ?
I'm trying to. I've got a few genres I really like.
No.
I really like horror stories. So I
What a
tend
shock.
to tune. Yes, it is shocking, isn't it? But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any recent series that has grabbed me. And we've already mentioned Sandman. I thought Sandman was excellent. Let's see. I took my wife to see Nope, and enjoyed
was that
that
good? I haven't seen that yet. I've been wanting to.
Yeah, it was. It's I'm watching and I'm realizing this is a classic old school horror movie with the most original idea for a creature ever, and so it fits into that particular genre very well. But it was also kind of twisty and weird, like all of Jordan Peele's movies are. So I like that. Yes, it's my wife's birthday today, so I'm taking her out to another movie tonight. We're going to go see The Invitation, which is apparently some vampire story. It's gotten kind of mixed reviews, but we'll see. It'll be romantic, right? Vampire stories are always romantic.
That's certain type.
Sadly, they tend to be lately, and that's might be one of the
Prefer
problems
the
with
ones
them.
that aren't.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but it's okay if it starts off romantic and then it takes a turn towards evil and darkness. Then it's a good vampire movie.
Now, then it's like most marriages.
Not at all like mine. Come on. That's another thing I'm weird about, but yeah.
Yeah, you were lucky. Or maybe you both just enjoyed the darkness together. HJ.
Well, I have been watching a little bit of the Sandman series and definitely loving it. It's quite true to the books, but with, good changes for TV as well. But I'm actually going to plug Everything Everywhere All at Once. I was that annoying person on the Discord that was just hyping it and, posting all that. And it seems to have not landed amongst all of my other peer group. But saw some really good, reviews for it online. Decided to watch it once. Then decided to watch it twice in the theaters. And actually purchased myself a high-def copy. And I might actually be purchasing another copy as well, too, just in physical form.
Okay, you definitely made it all the way to fandom with that one.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I haven't seen it yet. I've been wanting to.
But I agree, it's a really
I'd have
good
to catch
movie.
up.
I that was another one that was so creative and original, and I just loved it.
Oh yeah, it's multiverse is done right, essentially. You know, oftentimes multiverse
Yes.
is just
As opposed to the MCU?
yeah.
Yes, definitely. In
It
the
really
MCU, a multiverse is just a way to milk more money out of superheroes. So yeah.
we like Captain America, but obviously we can't get the actor back. So let's just cast someone else in there and make them a Captain America. It's like
Mhm.
sorta.
I sorry, I just
I
need
know
to
I'm
get
not
the image of milking superheroes out of my head.
talking. I'm not talking Sam
I
Wilson
knew
either.
that was going to
Like,
go like a bolt to the brain when I said it. So, yeah.
I mean, frankly, reanimating corpses at Sarah's hospital is just a much more comfortable topic, really.
Yes, it is.
oh boy.
So, I mean, that's just it, though. All of these things count too. It's especially since we're talking about things that we're doing to relax. And I think for most people out there, for most of the population at large, discussions and considering fixations and reanimating things, it's not really that relaxing. Although there's definitely a thread of that, a strong, heavy thread of that throughout all nerd culture.
Well, could I just make it quite clear that I do not, in fact, reanimate corpses for a hobby? This is strictly a professional thing.
Well, no, but you argue about the guy who did.
Touche. Yeah.
True.
So, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I suppose I'm gonna throw in some of my own things. Because I do a wide variety of crafting, nerding things. I mean, lately, started to get more into making things. I got a 3D printer that I still haven't learned to use. Recently started
Oh,
trying to teach myself to compose music. I don't know whether that's going to go anywhere. Do a lot of writing, do a lot of media criticism. Like, I was one of the few people who was actually kind of disappointed in Sandman, at least for the beginning bits. Um, Now that I've actually seen the whole thing, I've come around to, yeah, that was good. That was good. And to me, the only thing that I objected to really significantly is some of the characters did not seem to have the charisma they really needed to. Sadly, one of them was Morpheus. At least that was from my point of view. He got better later. Like that objection reduced as the series proceeded.
mhm.
But this is the kind of thing I think about all the time. this is one of my hobbies, doing the media criticism, because one of my actual day jobs is writing. So it's very important to start figuring out what works, what doesn't, and of course, I suppose I'm going to admit this right in front of a public thing, but huge fan of Neil Gaiman in general.
Yeah.
And I tend to like the, I don't know. It's a very difficult thing for me because heroes, always very dangerous concept. Just looking up to anybody, just asking for trouble. But at least so far, he seems to be a good guy too.
Yeah.
Like,
Unless you just jinxed him.
I doubt that's terribly likely, especially since
Yeah.
especially since one of his hobbies seems to be doing the rounds on social media and presenting large, very well crafted middle fingers to the people who are
Yes.
complaining about the adaptations.
Uh-huh.
And to be clear, I don't object to any of these things because they're adaptations or because of things changing. Because frankly, I thought Good Omens was the best adaptation of anything I have ever seen. Have you seen it?
Yes, it's great. And I agree that there were shortcomings to Sandman, but the way I felt about it was like, this is only the start, because a lot of the Eternal characters weren't very well fleshed out because they just didn't have time.
The Endless.
The Endless, yes.
I mentioned this not because I care to be quite that picky, even though that is a nerd trait and is appropriate, but because the Eternals are the Marvel ones that are just
which were
not
awful.
as interesting.
Yes. Yeah, but things like they needed to do more with desire and despair. I just felt like they kind of showed up and they got some of the things going, but there was no real follow-up with them. And there was a missing one. Who was it? Who was missing?
2. We haven't actually seen Destiny or Delirium yet.
Right. Those two.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the one that left is Destruction. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to add that one because Destruction we do see at some point in the comic.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
So that's what we'll see in part 2, I presume. If there is a second season, I hope there is.
Probably.
I hope
it
so.
sounds like
The
a
way
big
they're
bang.
running, they're going to need 2 to 3 seasons to actually hit the end of the original arc.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the chat has just mentioned, I believe in reference to Good Omens, that Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett did a fine job with the book, considering the problems with collaboration. Which is like, yeah, that was weird. That was, insofar as anything could be, Good Omens had been my favorite book. And then the miniseries came out, and suddenly the internet, especially Tumblr, just went bang, and everyone's mostly falling in love with the gayness of the Crowley and Aziraphale, which, fine, yeah, sure, let's why not? But it was just strange for me because, like, boom, a fandom appeared where I already was. It's like, oh, hello, welcome. What's all this? What do you want?
Instant fandom.
Yes, I also saw Michael Sheen the other day on the media, and what I found fascinating is he's Welsh, and he was commenting on the death of the Queen. Oh man, he is fierce. He was.
I saw similar things from Christopher Eccleston.
Yes.
Who had taken the opportunity to, shall we say, be extremely Irish about it.
Right. Yes, that's. I kind of felt sorry for England for a bit. I shouldn't.
There are many reasons why I could legitimately feel that way.
Yeah.
That got me wondering if David Tennant has weighed in. I think he's Scottish.
And he is. That's why I've said, I mean, with the I haven't seen Broadchurch, but to my knowledge, that's the only exception. I started to take it as sort of a red in pop culture that in any given show, you either get to see or hear David Tennant, not both at the same time. Because he's seen lots of stuff, but he's rarely doing Scottish accent. He's always called on to do an English one.
Right.
Except then he's the voice of Scrooge McDuck in the reboot of DuckTales, where he's doing the Scottish voice, but you can't see him because it's a duck.
Yeah, actually, this raises up an interesting point for me: is why these great pop culture figures like the ones we've just mentioned are all on the edges of the empire. We could also make a case that here in North America, all the really good comedians, for instance, are Canadian.
I suppose. I mean, I don't think it's. I don't know. I mean, is it actually out of proportion to population?
Oh, well, I think that's the point. It is out of proportion to the population, right? Because we overwhelm you guys as far as numbers, but there's all these great comedians and actors that are Canadian. I mean, William Shatner.
Oh, Lord. We mostly let you have him to take him off our hands.
Yeah, that was kind of a counterpoint.
But Mike Myers has not exactly covered himself in glory in recent years.
Yeah.
I haven't heard thing one of him since the end of Austin Powers, and that was a long time ago.
Oh, really? He's been in a bunch of things kind of peripherally. He's been in a bunch of serious roles and wasn't very impressive.
That's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's a question of I think there are two kinds of comedic actors, basically, and either you've got like the properly clownish ones, or you have the ones who are bringing sort of a human pathos to something. And not that I mean, there's no hard and fast boundary on anything, but I think that Mike Myers versus, say, Bryan Cranston gives you a pretty good example of the two different kinds of comedic actors and what happens when they move out of comedy and into drama.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could fairly be well supported by saying that Bryan Cranston can do drama.
Yes. He's not Canadian, is he?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But honestly,
So,
I don't know. I
I
have
don't
no
know
idea where
either.
he came from.
Yeah, we all sound alike.
Well, now that can be a choice too.
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget, I'm from Newfoundland. If I really wanted to
You
buy, you wouldn't be able to understand what I'm saying anyways.
what?
Exactly my point. Oh yeah, where I come from, what are you at is an entire sentence. It's actually 4 words and 3 syllables.
Uh-huh. Very efficient.
Extremely efficient, yes. So I'm going to pull it back now to what would you say are your most esoteric things that you're interested in or do as a hobby? And I will go first in this one because I have a good example here. Oh, there we are. So this is just a particular thing. I am interested in retro computing. Now, that's not that strange in and of itself. But I found the form that it takes is I like to collect books and magazines about old computers, like stuff from the 80s. 1994 is too recent. That kind of thing. And I just happen to have at hand what became the recent crown jewel of that collection, which is a book on programming COBOL. And what was this is a later edition, but the first printing of this one, copyright 1969.
Uh-huh.
I don't think I'll be able to get older than that.
Probably not. Yeah, I think somewhere I've got some Fortran texts from the 70s, but that's about as far back as I go.
I just find that these sorts of things seem kind of like, oh, that's adorable from the point of view of modern tech. Like there's actually a couple of pages in here dedicated to explaining what iron core memory is and declaring that that's what memory is. Just full stop. That's the only kind. So
Okay.
been a long old half century, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember using computers with iron core memory way back when. So that's what I learned some programming tricks on.
I do not. That's too old for me. But just curious, what do you think are your most esoteric, just stuff people probably don't think of as being an interest or a hobby, but you do it anyway?
Oh.
I think I've got one. I mean, I'm tempted to say hiking, but that's probably not esoteric enough. No.
That is actually not esoteric at all. It's just a little unusual under the nerd category.
Yeah, people have been doing this for 200,000 years, you know.
Whether or not they wanted to at some point.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the optional part that's new, you know. Not many people would willingly, you know, venture above the tree line and all that because it's such a death zone. But you know, this is what we do for fun nowadays. But yeah, no. If we're talking more obscure, I would say sort of learning and studying statistical methods and sort of the various sort of epistemologies which are part of science itself. You know, I mean, I'm sure this crowd is quite well aware of sort of the high level, this is what science is about. You know, we can sort of give you the basic pitter patter on that. But there's also a bunch of statistical methods underneath that and sort of ways to actually go about conducting experiments which follow those things. And as one of my hobbies, I actually got deeply into just what exactly those things mean, what are the sort of implications behind it. And I have even, given like a lecture or two on that topic as well, blogged about it and all that. It's probably the most esoteric I can go in terms of hobbies.
It's interesting. You're actually not the only person I know who has seemingly become interested to an extreme extent with Bayesian reasoning, which is interesting, and it raises the question: what is the chances, speaking as a Bayesian, that the concept of Bayesian reasoning is a mind virus?
Well, hang on. What's your priors on that?
Hazy, what would you say is the most esoteric thing you're interested in?
Oh man. One thing that I'm kind of an expert on the history of creationism. So I guess that's kind of weird and esoteric. I've got a huge bookshelf covered with all kinds of ancient texts from, old school creationists. So I've got the Genesis flood from 1961 and things like that. They're all uniformly awful and really stupid. And the amazing thing about reading the history of that particular, dare I call it, discipline, is they never learn anything. Nothing has changed. It's stupid all the way through, and they keep perpetuating the same stupid things every year. So it's kind of handy to know enough about the past of this stuff to be able to say, yeah, this is antique reasoning that you've got here.
It's kind of interesting. Do you think that Jesus was a myth or a mythster?
I have gone round and round about this, and it depends on how you define Jesus, right? I'm pretty sure that there was some Jewish preacher named Jesus 2,000 years ago. Was he anything like the guy in the New Testament? Probably not. It's like trying to argue about the reality of Robin Hood. Same thing.
I guess it's a question of how are you framing the argument? The idea that
Yes.
there were some preachers starting religions around about Judea 2,000 years ago, that's almost a given. That
Yep.
a couple of them had the extremely common name of Yeshua ben Yosef.
Yeah.
Probably.
And one of them happened to be lucky in having a very talented and rather nasty proselytizer named Paul helping him out.
Assuming it was just one of them and not syncretized even at that level. But
Yes.
Now we're getting esoteric off the topic.
Yeah.
Sarah, what would you say is the most esoteric thing that you're interested in as a hobby or just a interest for the fun of it?
Probably looking up terrible apologetic arguments to see how bad they can get, or looking up interesting past bits of Judaism from around the time of Jesus and seeing how the early sort of proto-Christianity cult fits in.
So you mean Christian apologetics?
Yeah. Sorry,
okay.
I don't really get into apologetics from other religions much.
Fair enough. You just said apologetics. I'm just like, okay.
Sorry, it tends to be in this society specifically Christian, and so that's what I went with. But yes,
completely fair. I was just in a position of going, wow, you could have apologetics for almost any discipline at all, or even the entire history of Canada.
No, I'm thinking specifically of fundamentalist Christianity type stuff.
It's useful stuff to know too, because like earlier this week, I was getting harangued by a guy who was trying to tell me that Catholicism was the original Christianity, and it hasn't changed in 2,000 years, which is just patent nonsense. I mean, that's
like, wow. Did that guy even hear about Vatican II?
Oh, he rejects that. Yeah. Well, he heard about it, but he rejects it.
how do you get to reject it if the argument is, and the Catholic Church didn't change? I mean, seems to me the Pope might have something to say about whether the Church changed.
Oh, he had a simple answer to that. The ones who changed were heretics.
Oh, Lord. Well, you can't
Yeah.
expect coherency from orangutans, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think if he's putting himself in the position of saying that the reason the popes have been heretics, then I think he might have possibly strayed a little off Catholicism himself. I mean, speaking as a non-Catholic, I mean, isn't what the Pope says generally considered kind of important?
Not by this guy. Well, the Pope maybe, but he told me that Jesuits were all heretics, which in some ways I guess you could make a case for. But
I
he was
guess
saying,
that's religion in a nutshell. You've got your high
Yeah.
priests, and then you randomly decide whether to listen to them or not. But in
yes.
this case, that's not what we were talking about. But our time is up, and we are now finished talking about what we were talking about. And thank you all. It was fascinating and strange in exactly the best kind of ways. So there you have it, folks. That's the sorts of things that the people on Free Thought blogs, at least some of them, are interested in, whether or not it seems like it might be a good idea. So
Yeah,
from HJ,
the weird ones stayed home, right?
Oh, I don't think so. We spent 10 minutes on embalming spiders and reanimating humans. From HJ, Sarah, PZ, and me, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.